Well, good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Darren Crouch. I'm the president of Passages International, and I wanted to thank you all very much for joining us today. I'm hoping that you can all see me. Is that correct? We're going to do something a little bit different today. We are going to do some live demonstrations. What you can see behind me is a selection area that we have in our collaboration area, which is a large area in our front office area where our teams can meet and work on issues they need to. I wanted to start by just kind of giving you some context and letting you know that towards the end of the presentation, I will be ending the presentation, but I'll also be sharing what you see behind me so that I can actually do a demonstration of how some of the scatter tubes work. So I am going to share my screen again. And get started on the presentation. So for those of you that this is more than your first one, I really appreciate you spending the time and taking time out of your day to come back and spend some time with us. Today's presentation is going to focus on scattering tubes specifically. The last continuing the conversation session focused on water scattering. And we're going to touch on some of the issues that we touched on last time with regards to data, why families are choosing cremation, and what they intend to do with the cremated remains. So for those of you that have been on the call before, please bear with me. I'll make it really brief, but I wanted to give some context to some of the issues that we're going to discuss today. We're also going to look at how the funeral experience has changed and how cremation presents limitless options for families. So let's get this started. So for those of you that don't know Passages International, we've been in business since 1999. We specialize in green and eco-friendly products. In fact, all the products that we sell are green, eco-friendly, or sustainable. But we're much more than that. We consider ourselves a partner to funeral homes, helping them solve problems that go back many years. And I'll give you an example of that. When we started the company back in 1999, the original concept was to create a product that funeral homes could sell to families instead of giving them a cardboard or a plastic box when they declined a permanent urn. What we found very early on was that families were, funeral homes were looking at the products that we introduced, which was the earth urn line, and deciding that it was a biodegradable and an eco-friendly product, which it was, and they positioned it as such. But really the original concept behind the formation of the company itself was to provide funeral directors with profitable options that they could sell to families who don't purchase a permanent urn. And you're going to learn a bit more today about why they're not buying urns. So let's look at the data. We touched on this data before. Before I get into the numbers, I want to touch on a focus group that Cana and Homestead has conducted. And it really talks about the change in emphasis with regards to families' values. 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the emphasis was on the dead body, embalming the body, setting the features, casketing, all those things, viewings, open caskets were very, very important and popular with consumers. Over the last decade or 20 years, that's really changed. And I believe, and data tells us, that the emphasis is not on the body itself, but the emphasis is on the remembering the person. So, we or families want to remember the person living in the good times, hiking, doing fun stuff, birthdays, Christmas, whatever celebration, versus remembering them dead in a casket. Cremation also offers connection and flexibility. With cremation, I think you all know, and families are seeing the value in this. So they don't have to make decisions or as many decisions right away. They can delay decisions. They can think about what they want to do in terms of disposing of the remains, whether it's interring in a cemetery or scattering the remains. But when you look at this chart, I think this chart really speaks volumes to what's happening today. This data comes from the 2019 NFDA consumer survey that came out last October. And it shows that only 17% of families intend to bury or inter their urn at a cemetery, and only about 8% intend to keep them at home. So about 75% of families are doing something other than what most of your traditional urn selections are designed for. When I go visit funeral homes, what I find is, 75, 80, 90% of the urns on display are wood, marble, bronze, cloisonne, and they're designed for permanent storage. But when you look at this data, I think it's going to be very clear to you that it's no wonder that families are rejecting traditional urns because they intend to scatter, and people don't want to invest the money in a permanent urn that they're then going to have to dispose of afterwards, or that is difficult to actually perform the scattering out of. And so I think if that's one of the biggest things that you take from today's presentations, is that you really need to be looking at your urn selection. Go into your urn selection room, look at what you have on display. And if you have 75, 85% wood, marble, bronze urns, then you have a problem, and you're going to struggle to sell those urns because the data is showing us the families want to buy something else. And I think that's where there's this big disconnect in the industry, where what the consumer wants to buy is not what the funeral home is selling. And that's a huge issue. So obviously, if we look at that data and we extrapolate it forward, we'll see that it's no wonder that a huge number of families are ending up with a minimum container, a plastic box or a cardboard box. And the reason for that is, as I mentioned, when they go in the funeral home, they don't see anything of value to them because they intend to scatter the remains, a good chunk of them, as I just showed you. And so when you don't have a broad selection of eco-friendly, biodegradable, scattering, water burial type products, then the family is going to default to the minimum, and they're either going to take your least expensive or free option, which is generally the cardboard or the plastic box, or you may invite them to bring something from home. But I think this is why it's such a problem. And I think when you look at the plastic box, it's a negative on so many levels. Number one, it's almost insulting to the family. They may spend $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 with you, and when they get home and they put that black plastic box on the kitchen table with the rest of the family, and they have the bill from your firm, the families that didn't come make arrangements with you, didn't have much of an interaction with your staff, are going to be scratching their heads, going, "Why on earth did we spend $3,000 with this firm, and all we have to show for it is this black plastic box?" Obviously, for a consumer, there's no value. It's not decorative. It's not really functional. It's obviously not eco-friendly, and probably hundreds of thousands of these end up in landfills every day. So I would be looking, as we talk about the scattering tubes, the real target audience for the scatter tube is the family that is not buying a permanent urn now, and you are giving a cardboard or a plastic box to. So the second big thing I would take away from today's presentation is do some reports, ask your staff, how many cardboard or plastic boxes are you giving away? And if you're, some people may say to me, "Well, I'm selling for $49, I buy them for $2 or $3. Yeah, you're making a good markup, but you're leaving another 50 or 100 or sometimes several $100s on the table, because that family that ended up taking the plastic box potentially would have bought a scattering tube at around $100, or a turtle urn or a shell urn or some other urn that you would have been able to retail for $300-400. So I think you need to look at the opportunity you're missing. And yeah, on paper, it looks like a great margin on a plastic box, but really it's a terrible disservice to the industry and to your business. All right, so let's look at scattering tubes. We introduced the scattering tubes probably in 2007, 2008 to the US market. And when we introduced them, we really felt like we had solved the issue, where we created a product that was specifically designed for families that wanted to scatter. And funeral directors were able to look at this and say, yes, I can see how this can be a replacement or an option other than the cardboard or the plastic box for families. The product is designed specifically for scattering. Yes, you can keep it and it won't deteriorate over time, but it is intended for permanent storage. And it's really clear what its use is. So when a family sees it, they understand very quickly what the use of the product is. It also hits the right price point. As I alluded to a few moments ago, We have funeral homes selling the scatter tubes anywhere from $49 to $99. Personally, I don't think you should really be retailing them for much over 100. If you keep it under 100, really, it's a no-brainer for a family. They're expecting to pay hundreds of dollars for an urn, and when you give them an option of an urn that's designed for expressly designed for scattering, and it's relatively affordable, that's going to be something they're going to default to. What you don't want to do is you don't want to keep the plastic or the cardboard box in the mix, because the consumer that you're going to target with the scattering tube is the consumer that you're currently giving a cardboard or a plastic box to. We do have some funeral homes that are actually making the scattering tubes their minimum container. And I think that's a really good option, especially if you price it correctly and give families choices, because now we know that at least 50% of families intend to scatter cremated remains. So as I mentioned, I really believe that the scattering tube is a much better alternative than obviously the cardboard box. It's also, I think, a better alternative than sheet metal MDF urns that are priced usually around $100, $125. When you're selling an MDF or a sheet metal urn, you're going to have a harder time selling your real bronze urns and your higher end woods, because families are going to default to that. And so if you have very inexpensive permanent urns, then it makes it tricky to sell your higher end urns. And so with something that's clearly temporary, clearly designed for scattering, that won't be the case. If they're looking for permanence, they need to pay the price associated with wood, marble, bronze. If they're looking for simplicity and affordability and scattering, then you have options for them at that price point. I think these also align better with the family's values. I think most people don't really know what they're going to get if they don't buy a permanent urn. And if they're shown a full selection of scattering tubes, it really becomes an option for them that is meaningful and attractive and functional. To talk a little bit about the scatter tubes themselves, they are made of heavy cardstock and a printed image. There's no plastic or metal in them. They're actually made from over 80% recycled content. And so they could be used for biodegradable burial, but we really recommend them more for scattering. As I mentioned before, it's specifically engineered for scattering. Each tube features a lid that you would remove, and I'll demonstrate this in a few minutes. And then it has a perforated little disc or push-in tab inside the lid that you would basically push in and then scatter the remains. It is a durable container. I know there are sometimes people ask, well, is cardboard or this paper durable? And the answer is yes. And I would also say, this is a product that was designed not to be used with the bag. So when you push your finger through the push-in tab on the top, you're basically pouring the cremated remains straight out of the top of the urn. The family doesn't have to try to dig in the urn and loosen a twisty tie or cut the bag or anything like that. So this is one of in fact, it's the only urn that we sell that doesn't come with a bag, because it's not designed to come with a bag. We want to make it as easy as possible to scatter from. And as I mentioned, it can be recycled after use, or it can be discarded or buried. I wanted to talk about the experience. We're working with funeral homes to really talk about selling the sizzle and not the steak. We believe if you can create a picture in a family's mind of the experience that they can have using our product or any product, then the price of that product becomes irrelevant. So for example, the beauty of scattering, it enables you to go to the beach or off the coast and scatter the remains, and that person could be swimming with dolphins for the rest of their lives. You can scatter the remains in a meadow of white wildflowers. Or as we talked about the flexibility earlier, you might scatter the urns on a favorite hiking trail, or on a ski run, or on a backcountry ski path. It really gives you a lot of different options. And as I mentioned, we're actually creating experience booklets and experience point of sale materials, so that when a family goes into a selection room, they're learning about the different options and the different experiences that they can create using the products. And in the last presentation we talked about with Water Barrel, we really talked about the experiences that you can create using some of our urns for water barrels. And we've had stories of live turtles swimming up to one of our biodegradable turtles. We've seen families use our Journey Earth urns for scattering and off the coast of Maui during a whale watching cruise. But we can actually work with funeral homes to help them in their selection rooms create posters and images that will paint the picture for the funeral home, for the family. I think it's really important as a funeral director, just as a wedding planner would be, to help families through this very, very difficult time. And as we go down the road and as time passes, the product is going to be a means to an end. The product's going to allow the experience. But really what we need to be selling in the funeral home is the experience itself. And then we need to be available for the family to share the ideas that we know about, because they may not have ideas, or they may not understand or know how to use it, and we're the experts on the products. And so you would communicate with them how each product works, because some products are not designed for certain functions and certain experiences. So I think experience is really, really important. And if you wanted to talk more about that in your business, I'm more than happy to share some of the work that we're doing, partnering with funeral homes here in Albuquerque, that is having tremendous success and is really a new way of looking at how we sell urns. And a lot of this is driven by the data. This is not something we just dreamed up. You know, I think we need to be conscious of what the consumer is telling us they want, and not trying to change their minds. We need to come across to the side of the consumer and change our delivery, change our service, change our outlook to align more closely with them, and not the other way around. So often I hear with funeral homes, you know, they're trying to convince a family to do this or change their mind to do that. And really it needs to be about listening and providing the family with what they want. And if we do that, we'll remain relevant and profitable. Otherwise, we're going to go the way of yellow cab and the taxi industry that's completely been, you know, usurped by Lyft and Uber, or, you know, Blockbuster. You know, if Blockbuster done a web streaming service of its videos, then it probably would still be in business, and NetSuite wouldn't be the giant that it, not NetSuite, Netflix would not be the giant that it is today. So really, really important to listen to our families and align ourselves with their values. So going back to the scatter tubes, we have over 20 designs. We have the largest selection by far of any supplier in the industry. And the reason for that, obviously, is we want to give people choices. You would never have a one wood casket and one metal casket. And it's the same with this. We want to give families choices with regards to their scattering products, especially when we know that scattering is going to be at least 50% of the families that come into your business. As I said before, the scatter tube is really targeted at those families that either tell you they scatter or reject a permanent or traditional urn. I also wanted to talk really briefly about pricing of these products. You know, the adult size, which is a 200 cubic inch size, which is what you're seeing on your screen now. And this is only a small selection of the designs. They sell anywhere from $20 to $32, and it really depends on how you purchase them. I would strongly suggest that you purchase them in bulk, and we can package them in either boxes of 20 or 12. And the reason I say that is because A, you get a much better price from us, and B, you're also paying about the same amount for shipping when you buy 12 or 1. So shipping on these typically costs $15 to $18, whether we send you 1 or 12. And you can see, you know, it can either end up costing you, you know, $45, $48 to buy one at a time and ship them individually, or it can be costing you, you know, $22, $23 if you buy them in bulk. And if you think about the number of plastic or cardboard boxes that you give away or sell, you can see it really makes a lot of sense to buy them in bulk. We do also allow you to mix and match, and so you can mix and match any of our designs within the same size. So if you wanted 6 Mountain View and 6 Ocean Sunset, you can do that. If you wanted 12 different designs, you can do that, as long as they're the same size. So for those of you that have been on this webinar, I really want to thank you, number one, but I also wanted to give you a little sneak peek. a preview of what we have coming. So we introduced in the spring the butterfly blossom that you see in your left. Over the summer, we introduced the saguaro trail for our friends down in the Southwest, in the Arizona region. And we're also going to be introducing our Starry Night tube, which we're going to roll out probably in about 6 or 8 weeks. And so we want to keep rotating out the designs to give you unique choices to present to families, but also rotate out the ones that have been less popular. Our scatter tubes can also be engraved. A lot of people don't know that, but we can engrave on the scatter tubes, and we can do different color fills. We can do gold, silver, black, depends on the tube design. We do that in-house here. Our great graphic design and art department will create proofs for you. They can adjust the proof, and if you sign off on that proof by noon Mountain Time or 2 p.m. East Coast time, we can generally ship that tube the same day. The pricing of the engraving is about the same price as any other urn. We can do almost anything on the scatter tube that you would on any other urn. It costs about $40 in that range for 3 lines of text. You can do another additional line for $12. We have clip art, and we can actually also put a photograph on the top of the tube. So if you look at these tubes, you'll see the one on the left is actually a plain tube, and we have 2 or 3 designs that are plain that you can invite the family to decorate themselves. They can paint on it, they can use a marker on it, and then of course we can put a photograph on the top, which you see in the middle, with a photo of the deceased, the name and the dates, and the Patriot tube that you see on the right obviously shows our engraving. We have every one of our scatter tube designs comes in at least 2 sizes. All of our designs come in adult, which is 200 cubic inch, and they all come in mini, which is 20 cubic inch. We have 6 different designs that come in 5 different sizes. So 6 different sizes. Am I reading that right? 5 different sizes. So we have the Ascending Dove, the Ocean Sunset, the Mountain View, the Silver Lining, the Bluebell Forest, and I think I'm missing one, Rainbow Pond, that come in these 5 different sizes. The token size is 20 cubic inches, and we go all the way up to the extra large, which is 240 cubic inches. Each one of our scattering tubes comes with loading instructions, and so what I'd like to do now is we're going to do some experimenting, and I'm going to stop the presentation, and I'm going to give you a demonstration of how you load the scatter tube. So, we good? Okay, so we're going to start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load an Ocean Sunset scatter tube. I already have some cremated remains over here. And what I wanted to show you is the scatter tube comes apart into 3 pieces. There's 3 parts to the scatter tube. There's the outer printed part of the tube, the inner white tube, and of course the lid. The cremated remains are going to get placed into this white tube. And so what I have over here is I have a little tub of remains, and just excuse me while I load this. So you place the cremated remains into the inner white tube. And these are pet remains. Okay. So now I just put a little bit in there. So the cremated remains are in the white tube. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get some Elmer's glue, just basic paper Elmer's glue, and we're going to put a bead of glue about 1 inch up the inside of this tube. And you want to do a generous bead of glue all the way around. Okay. And then you're going to slide this printed tube over the white tube. So you slide it over slowly and slow it down. There is a hole in the bottom of the tube, which I'll talk about in a minute. This hole allows us to slide the one tube over the other tube. You're also going to notice, you may have noticed, but inside each tube is a silica pack to make sure that the tube doesn't get too wet, because they're made in a very humid environment. And the other thing we're going to provide you with is a sticker that you can fill out with the cremation ID, the name of the deceased, and the date on it. and you would stick that on the bottom. So we have one that we did earlier, and that's what this looks like. We are going to peel that sticker off, and we are going to stick it on the bottom of the scatter tube. So now this scatter tube is being glued, and we've sealed the bottom, the hole in the bottom that allows the air to escape, that allows us to open and close the tube. I'm now going to turn it the correct way up. No remains are coming out, and I'm going to place the lid on it. And the way to line the design up is to line the back up. So there is a seam on the back of this tube that you can see. If you line that seam up, then the front of the image will line up. So that is how you assemble a scattering tube. Again, there was no bag, very, very easy. I would suggest doing it several hours before the family comes so the glue will dry. And then I wanted to show you a scatter tube that we had loaded earlier. This is our Mountain View scatter tube. Again, it has the label on the bottom. The family would just take the lid off. You'll notice that this white tube doesn't move. It's now glued in here because I glued it in. You'll also see there's a push-in tab there. Not sure if you can see that, how well you can see that. It's a push-in tab. And so when the family's ready, they're simply going to remove the lid. They're going to put their finger on this push-in tab. And they're going to push it in like that. And they can pinch it back on the inside. And then they would simply pull those remains out like that. And that's it. It does require a little bit of shaking, but that is basically how the family would use the scattering tube. A couple other things that I wanted to show you really quickly before we wrap up is our token tubes. So all of the tubes that I mentioned, all of the sizes have this perforated disc on top for scattering, except the token tubes. So the token tube is too small to do that. So the token tube, the family would just remove the lid and then can scatter the remains. We don't provide bags for these, but it might be an idea if you're using these to either provide a small Ziploc bag or put a very small drop of glue on the inside to glue it on. I mean, they are, the lids will stay on, but these don't have the push-in tab. I also wanted to show you presentation box that we have for our token tubes. So this box comes with 6 different tubes. I wanted to just show you that there's what that looks like, if you see that. It comes with 6 different tubes, and so the 6 designs that I told you before, you can either mix and match 6 different designs, or you can put 6 of the same design in here. It has a magnetic closure that closes here. And we can also engrave the top if you want to do that. And of course, what this allows families to do is split the cremated remains and scatter in multiple different locations. And these have been very, very popular. These, I think it's about $49, depending how you buy them, for the packaging and the urns themselves. So I'm going to share my screen again. We'll go to the next slide. Will we? I guess so. It's our last slide anyway. Yeah, that concludes my presentation. I know we went a little bit longer than we typically do, but I just want to let you know, thank you very much. If you want to talk about any of the things that I talked about in the presentation, you can reach out to me directly. My email is darren@passagesinternational.com. You can follow us on social media. Like us on Facebook, all that good stuff. We're also doing another webinar, I believe it's on October 8th. And we're going to do that on earth urns. And so I invite you to join us on October 8th, and we can continue the conversation, and hopefully we can all learn something. So I don't know if we have any questions. I'd like to open it up and have Anais let me know, or unmute everyone. If you have any questions, please fire away. Do we have any questions?
Not seeing any.
Okay. Everyone unmuted?
No, no one's still muted. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thank you, Kelsey. I can't read all that, but I appreciate it. Sounds like a positive. All right. Well, I'll hang out for a few minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Don't be shy.
Well, I can just say thank you, right? If I
Yeah, I mean, your microphone's unmuted, so you can just say.
I can hear you, Kathleen.
Yeah, I can hear you. If anyone wants to ask a question directly, I'm more than happy to answer.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you very much. This is an excellent presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. The control group for the study, someone asked about the control group for the studies. That's the NFDA. I don't know all the ins and outs of that data, but I would assume coming from the NFDA that it's reputable. The beauty of those studies, and which I really love, is it's not my data. I've been beating my head against the wall, as Sherry and some of you know, for many years, saying that we should be doing this, and now independent data is supporting that. And I think if a lot of you take a good critical look at your businesses, the data's been in front of us. I mean, there's no surprise, I mean, really. I also wanted to mention, while any of you are thinking of additional questions, you know, we created a space here in Albuquerque that is a collaboration space for our staff to work in, but it's also a space that we want to welcome our customers to. And so if you are ever in the area, we'd love to show you our facility. We'd love to have you meet our team, and we'd love to collaborate with you on really moving to a new normal with families in terms of, you know, providing them something that can really wow them versus, you know, I think in some cases we're underwhelming people, and I think we need to get back to overwhelming people with the services and the products that we provide. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up there. Appreciate everyone, and be safe. Thank you so much.